One of the fastest ways to hurt yourself as a personal trainer is when you have a problem with a boundary and a client. There are 4 basic boundary types. I'm going to be talking specifically today about attachment boundaries. I'm going to give you an example from a situation I had with one of my clients because it's an illustration of just how fast a positive transformation can turn into a negative one. Now, many years ago, I had a client who lost over 100 pounds with me. This was an unusual situation because this particular client had attachment issues from the very start. Now, I think most personal trainers, when they begin their progress with a client, when they begin the process of actually, speaking with a client for the first time and getting them started on a program, of course, we all want to help people transform. We want to help their transformation take place. We're going to be giving them information. We're going to be talking to them about nutrition, exercise, supplementation, maybe hydration, making sure they get enough rest. And we might be introducing them to, lifestyle skills and habits that are going to help them reach their goal. And it's common, at least in my experience, that at the beginning, sometimes we have clients that are really excited, they're motivated, they feel this level of, they're sort of pumped up about getting in shape. And so they might communicate with you a little bit more than normal, right? So maybe they have questions about when their next session is. They forgot what during the initial talk, or they're not really sure what you wanted them to do between workouts, or I'm a little sore. What am I supposed to do? And they might send you a text message here and there or ask a few questions about what they should eat. Completely normal. And when my clients message me, they usually are explaining, I'm going to be late for a session. I have to cancel. I need to reschedule. How many sessions do I have left before I need to, invest in another package? Whatever it could be. Clients that I've worked with, by and large, have been respectful of the fact that texting me outside of our session is something that they do as sort of like you would another professional, a business, any business or profession that you're working with. Unfortunately, in this particular case, the example I'm going to share with you today, this client began texting me within 5 minutes of the end of our first session. So we finished our training, and this client went to the locker room and sent me a text message saying that she'd enjoyed the workout. And again, at first I thought, motivated client, this is great. She's excited. I'm sure she's going to do fantastic with me. But then she sent me a text message after her shower to tell me about how great she felt taking a shower after our workout. And I thought, well, that's 2 text messages in last like 15 or 20 minutes, and we just finished the session. This continued throughout the day and then throughout the week. And even though I saw her the following Wednesday and the following Friday, this frequency of text messages only increased. Now, over the next couple of months, I did have multiple conversations with this client explaining that the frequency of her text messages, the timing, they would start at 6 a.m., apparently when she woke up, I guess, and they would end at 11 p.m., which is apparently, I think, when she fell asleep. I don't know, right? I should have, because she kept me informed on everything else. But this client would text me about everything that was happening in her life, what was going on at work, what she was eating, the fact that she passed the donut shop on her way to work and didn't stop. That was a big deal, so she pulled over to text me. The texting became relentless, 40 to 60 text messages a day. And I explained to her on numerous occasions, this is unacceptable, you can't do this. And I would ignore them. There was no way in this world I could possibly read 40 to 60 text messages from one client. Imagine, too, that I had another probably 20 clients at that point. I had a full schedule, working at least 40 hours a week. Some of those clients I saw once a week, twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week. And so my schedule was booked. And if I were to have 20 people texting me 40 to 60 text messages a day, there's no way I could manage that. In time, this client I would tell her to stop texting me. She would start to email me, frequent emails. And then gifts. She would try to gift me things, gift cards to coffee shops or books or whatever she wanted to bring me. I declined those things politely. I declined them. I explained, look, I'm really not supposed to accept gifts. I appreciate your efforts. And she was losing weight. She was doing great. So there are 2 big issues here. One is the revenue that a client has they're bringing into the club. That revenue is important. It's important to the gym. It's important to the trainer. So for me, I wanted the money because I needed the expenses for living, right? At the same time, the client is losing weight dramatically. So in the gym, it looks really good for me to have a client that's making changes. Other people in the gym want to train with me. I now have a waiting list because people are saying, I want to work with that guy because he got that woman the results she was looking for. I see her changing. I see him with her. She's making incredible changes. How do I get to work with that guy so I can see these changes? So there's that aspect of it. Unfortunately, the bigger aspect for me is it's multidimensional, I guess, or multifaceted. On the one hand, you have the relationship that I have with my girlfriend at the time, who is upset because this woman that she doesn't know is texting me 40 to 60 times a day. So it interrupts our weekend. It interrupts constantly. And of course, my phone's on silent. I'm not paying attention to it, but it's when I open the phone up and see that there are, 20 or 30 text messages from this person. I scroll right past it and go to the next client. But the second thing is it becomes almost therapeutic, right? And I'm not a medical professional. I'm a fitness professional. And so when a person is dependent on me, it does cross the boundary, this attachment boundary that we'll talk about in a little bit more here in a second. But I want to make sure it's clear to this client that I am not providing any sort of therapy. And when the client is this dependent, it starts to blur that line. So again, I have to go back and have a conversation to explain to her that, look, I appreciate the fact that you are opening up and you are being very vulnerable in these moments. The messages she was sending me were very personal, but they were inappropriate for the scope of my role. And unfortunately, I don't believe personal trainers are trained by certification organizations to manage situations where a client has a very significant need. Now, it's important too to realize that this was not a romantic or sexual boundary that this client was breaking. There did not seem to be any attraction on her part to me in terms of romance or sex. It just didn't, there was nothing there. On the other hand, there was certainly no attraction on my end, physically or romantically, sexually. There was no attraction that I had toward this woman. There was never any flirtation. There was never any conversation that even came close to that world. However, obviously, the client is now depending on me emotionally for their success. And it came to a head one day when I was training her, and she said, I'm thinking about having a tattoo of your initials put on my body because you've helped me lose this weight. Now, with this comment, I was taken aback. I was kind of surprised and a little uncomfortable, to say the least. I was really shocked, and I said, "That's really inappropriate for you to do that." I had her repeat it to me a couple times. She showed me where she wanted it on her body, and I felt that was inappropriate. It was on her chest, and I felt bad. I felt badly because, on the one hand, I now have somebody that is so excited about changing with me that it's great, right? This person has lost over 100 pounds. That is that is a human being. She had to burn off literally over 100 pounds. It was like 115 pounds, I think. So for me, that's huge. Like, that's exciting for me. I'm happy that I was able to help this client. At the same time, I see the problem. And despite my best efforts to manage that problem, at this point, I realized this client needs to move to a different trainer. Probably should have happened sooner. But again, trying to keep that revenue, trying to keep the client happy. A lot of positive feedback from people. Hey, I see you helping that lady. She looks amazing. How'd you do that? What'd you do? Whatever. The gym didn't want me to do this. They didn't want me to fire the client. They didn't want me to move her. They wanted me to keep her. They said, look, you got a person that's willing to permanently ink their body with your initials because you helped them. That's huge. You're like a celebrity to this woman. And probably more. And I didn't want that. So I did move this client to a different trainer. There were a lot of tears. She was very upset, threatened to leave the gym, the whole 9 yards. But it was a tremendous lesson in this attachment boundary. What I don't think certification organizations do poorly is they do a great job of teaching trainers how to train the body. And there is some motivational type work that some of the certification organizations will bring up. I'm certified with the American College of Sports Medicine, which I think is by far one of the best out there. I was also trained with the National Academy of Sports Medicine, a fantastic organization. I've been certified with the Aerobic and Fitness Association of America. And when I became a personal trainer, I started with 24 Hour Fitness, and they had their own certification program, and I was certified with them, of course. In all of those settings, in all of those educational courses that I took, there was very little information about what to do when a client shares these emotional issues with the trainer. This comes down to them. The 4 boundary types I'll go over here are this attachment boundaries that I've talked about here, where the client is emotionally dependent on the trainer for success. When I left that client, she didn't want me to leave. She thought she would fall back into her old habits. She thought I was responsible for the weight loss. I was not. I am responsible for guiding the client to the weight loss. So that attachment boundary is a big issue. Romantic and sexual boundaries, I'll save that for another podcast, but that is a completely different area. And for personal trainers, it's important to realize that in both the attachment and the sexual and romantic boundaries, we are with our clients a lot. We spend 30 minutes, maybe an hour, maybe longer in a session with a client one-on-one in most cases. And that boundary, those boundaries can easily erode if you're not careful. It's a body-centric field. I'm complimenting my clients. I am complimenting my clients on the changes they've made. I am careful not to compliment a client on how attractive she may look. It is important for me to maintain a reputation, regardless of what I feel. If a client looks fantastic, I have no problem saying, you look fantastic within the scope of my role. You've lost the weight. You're doing the things you need to do to get yourself in shape. And I'm seeing changes, which is part of the career, part of the field. At the same time, some clients misinterpret that. So for the sexual and romantic side of things, you have to be very careful to manage that boundary as well, because you can easily slip into the wrong area of your practice if you're a personal trainer, especially if there's mutual interest or if you're interested in a client. You have to be very, very careful, because reputation is a key ingredient of being a successful personal trainer. The other 2 boundaries are medical, which is where you are having to be very careful about the scope of your practice and making sure you don't lean into medicine. Here in the United States, we have very strict laws that differentiate between the medical field and the fitness field, or the health and medical field versus just the health field. And being a personal trainer, you fall into more of the you're in the health world, but you're not a medical practitioner. So again, you have to follow that line. And I'll provide information on the medical boundaries as well in a different podcast. And then the last one is social, and that is where you have more of these social settings. This is going to involve more of what your personal life is like when you're dealing with your clients, having boundaries that prevent them from knowing too much about you, and maybe you knowing too much about them, because people will share. So my advice to you here today is this. When you are working with a client and they begin to depend on you for success, it's very important for you to step back and let the client know, sit them down and have a conversation. Now, again, I had this conversation with this client several times. I probably, in retrospect, maybe could have been more forceful. I wasn't, because I was trying to be nice, I guess. It's not an excuse, but it's the reason, right? I was trying to be polite, professional. My experience before fitness was in Disney. I worked for Walt Disney World and Walt Disney Feature Animation, and I made movies, and I worked with the cast members at Disney World, and we were all very polite. One of we're guest service experts. That's all of us are guest service oriented. That the whole company is guest service oriented. So when I came out of that and I went into the fitness world, it was a completely different environment. It's generic. There's no real, 24 Hour Fitness had guidelines for how to be nice to people, but it wasn't a massive gushing of guest service awareness constantly. It was personal training, right? Different field. But when I was working with my clients, it was very, very difficult sometimes to manage that because I was raised in a professional setting being very guest oriented, not me oriented. And as a personal trainer, you have to be able to sit down with the client and say, this information that I'm sharing with you or this information that you're sharing with me goes beyond the scope of my practice. I am saddened to hear that you are having this difficulty, but I'm going to recommend that you meet with a mental health professional, a counselor, a rabbi, a priest, whoever it is you're going to recommend. Because what this does, and a lot of people don't want to refer out, a lot of trainers don't want to refer somebody away because they think that person may take the client's money and time and take them away from the trainer. This is false. This sets you up for success. And as a personal trainer, I have referred all of my clients at some point or another to other people, other professionals, massage therapists, yoga, Pilates, whatever type of other fitness program they might need. Because what has happened in my experience has been very simple and very helpful. And that is when a client is referred out, the person that gets the referral wants to know more about me. They want to see how they can work with me. So that's a benefit. The other thing is it sets you up as a professional to say, that's outside the scope of my job. You need to see this person. They go to see that person and they get the help they need. And now you're seen as a better quality trainer who got them the end result. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for results. So if I can help a client with that, that's very important. But you might have to sit down with the client and say, you're going to need to stop sending me as many text messages, limit the amount of information you share with me. And then as a personal trainer, you need to be consistent with this across the board. Every client you can. There are clients that I am family friends with now. I've trained them for 9, 10 years. I've trained them at their house. I've trained them at the gym. I've trained them in my own private studio. I'm friends with their family. I'm friends with their extended family. We are all friends on Facebook. They know about my history. They know about my life. And that's an exception. The majority of my clients know a limited amount about me. I usually share a very vague, basic description. I tell them where I was born, my degree, my certifications. I talk maybe a little bit about my family, my interests, my hobbies, but it's very limited because I don't want that person to know too much about me in the first place. And then in the second place, I don't want it to become a habit and erode the boundary that I have with them, which is to make sure we stay professional. So if you're in a situation where a client is sharing too much, during a session, I try to deflect the information. That's one thing I'm very good at. If somebody starts to share something that's very personal and I don't really want to get involved in it, I will have them do push-ups because now they're on the ground and they're facing the floor and they're talking to the floor. They're not necessarily able to talk to me. It quiets them down for a second, or I'll have them maybe do some cardio, or I'll just tell them. It's also easy, of course, to tell them and say, hey, we got to move on to the next exercise, and I'll kind of gently ignore the comment that they've made or the talk that they're having. I'll just kind of deflect it back into something else, or I'll bring them back to fitness. Whatever it is, I'll just come up with ways to deflect a client and keep them from discussing something that's too much. When it comes to the communication outside, you can, of course, set up guidelines. It's a lot easier now. The phones we have are smartphones. The phone I had back then was not able to. I didn't really have a way to turn off messaging, from one particular person or whatever. They weren't as robust as they are today. So today it's a lot easier to manage that. But again, you might have to have the conversation to sit down and say, I think you're too dependent on me, and figure out a solution with the client, because again, they might need to talk to somebody. As a personal trainer, if you can have a few counselors, therapists, psychologists, even, like I said, rabbis or priests, somebody that you can refer your client to get the help they need. Some people just need to talk to somebody. That might be perfect for them, a rabbi or a priest. Somebody might need actual medical help. Their general practitioner, if they have a doctor that they're already seeing that you're involved with, you can always refer back to them and say, hey, you should talk to your doctor about this. That way they can share that information with the doctor and not with you. You need to protect yourself as a trainer. I know this firsthand because for me, it was very difficult to move past the situation where I was working with clients and they were sharing too much information with me, or they were telling me things that affected me. It bothered me to hear it. It upset me to hear them say they were having this issue or this challenge. I wanted to help them through that. And so that is definitely something we want to avoid when we're working with our clients. That's it for this one. Stay tuned. I'm going to be putting up more information. If you like this, go ahead, share the video, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be putting up lots more information like this for personal trainers to help them understand what it is they need to do to get to be the most successful trainer they can be. So that's it for now. My name is Ron Betta. Stay tuned, and I'll see you next time.